Ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to have this guy on the show every quarter, and then once a year on the Megapod. He's kind enough to join us. It's a tradition unlike any other, one might say. He's the creator of Football Outsiders, the proprietary stat DVOA. Now he plies it straight over at FTN. It is the great Aaron Schatz, everybody. How you doing, Aaron?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah, Brandon Staley, we were all so excited about how aggressive he was on fourth down that first year, but what's the genius of a defensive-minded head coach who doesn't have a good defense? That's the problem.
With great players, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
On top of it.
Right. I mean, Khalil Mack, and obviously Bosa's not there right now, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, since you bring up Staley, do you think someone like Dan Campbell, who is just as aggressive, if not more, on fourth downs than Staley was initially, do you think he doesn't get enough flack for the way he plays it? If Staley did back then?
We love the aggressiveness. The aggressiveness is good. The problem with Staley was that he stopped being aggressive.
Right.
His aggressiveness became kind of random. And then all the other aspects of coaching he's not good at. He's not good at locker room management, and he's not good at running his own defense right now.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing we were excited about was the fourth downs. And after the first year, he sort of retrenched on the first down. I love Dan Campbell because Dan Campbell is the combination of very smart analytically, and he wants to break your kneecaps.
He does.
So he's got the motivation and the inspiration and the locker room management going for him, and he's got the analytics.
No, you're 100% right. I misphrased that. I'm with you. I like the aggression. I guess what I was talking about was the anti-Staley people don't give Campbell the same guff, if you will.
You're right. They don't. It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is always interesting with DVOA. And again, DVOA, for those who don't know, analyzes play-by-play. Every single play. Aaron has gone back to the early 80s now and has managed to find every single play and analyzed it based on the average result of what that play should have yielded. By the way, are we going to go earlier than 81 if you can get the video? How difficult is that?
It turns out that even NFL Films does not have the Bengals-Chargers game we need from 1980. So we're going to have to do 1980 without one game.
How is it that one game got lost in history? That's interesting.
It was bound to eventually happen. Going backwards, we were eventually going to hit a game that got lost.
Yeah.
And there is no existent play-by-play or video. There's a truncated video that's edited of the highlights of that game, but there's no full video or play-by-play of a 1980 game between Dan Fouts and Ken Anderson.
All right, if one of the listeners on this show happens to randomly have access to that, what is the ransom you would pay for that video?
Good amount, yeah.
By the way, that is not. We're not talking about the playoff game, famous Ice Bowl game between. This is a regular season
like week 9 or something. And the Chargers won. Yeah, Chargers won big.
Okay. Now, you have this history, and, every once in a while, we talked many times about the 2007 Patriots and the 91 Skins. However you parse them, the two greatest teams of all time per DVOA. But we have a couple teams this year that, through this point of the season, are flirting with history. Explain that to us.
Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers are the 5th best DVOA through 13 games ever.
Wow.
They are behind just the 07 Patriots, the 91 Redskins, the 85 Bears, and the 98 Broncos. But the real surprise is that the Baltimore Ravens have the 10th best DVOA ever through 13 games, which is a shocker because no one thinks of them as being that good.
That was the follow-up question.
Fantastic against good teams. They dismantled the Lions. They destroyed the Browns the first time they played them. The second time was close. Their losses are close. They tend to not run up the score in the fourth quarter, right? Which DVOA downweights fourth quarter, running up the score in a big win, that's not an issue for the Ravens the way it was for like the Dolphins this year. So the system loves the Ravens, but not as much as it loves the 49ers. Now, look, there's no guarantee of anything. The 6th best team through 13 games was the 2012 Patriots, and the 2012 Patriots lost the AFC Championship game, right? I mean. This list also has, obviously the Patriots in 2007 lost the Super Bowl. The 95 49ers didn't even make it to the NFC Championship game to face the Cowboys because they lost to the Packers. And then a team that would be on the list, except they only played 12 games that counted, that mattered, is 87, the 1987 strike 49ers. And they lost their first playoff game. So nothing is guaranteed.
The Anthony Carter game, as I recall that one
yes,
being.
The Anthony Carter game. Yep.
Okay, so that's okay. The Niners being fifth. You just mentioned the four teams in front. The 2007 Patriots lost famously as an undefeated team in the Super Bowl. 91 Skins. For goodness sakes, the starting quarterback got sacked 7 times all year. Mark Rippon.
85 Bears won the
85
Super Bowl.
Bears.
Broncos
maybe
the Super Bowl.
Maybe the most famous team of all time, the 85 Bears, and the 98 Broncos who won it all. So this is rare air. But about the Ravens, because you point that out, so the reasons being that and we remember those games, right? They went out and they crushed the Lions from the beginning. It wasn't garbage time. You're right. They beat other teams badly. But as the guy who's responsible for this metric, if I give Aaron Schatz's human being the truth serum, and even though you know all the details that got them to this, does it pass the Aaron Schatz test of, yeah, I think they are this good?
I don't think they're quite this good, in part because they've now lost Mark Andrews. But I think they are clearly the second best team in the league.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think they're as close to the 49ers as these numbers suggest. They're farther from the 49ers than this number suggests. But they are the best team in the AFC right now.
Do you do simulations of Super Bowl exactas, like who's playing who? Do you do that?
Yes. And I mean, our numbers are so high on the 49ers and the Ravens, especially the 49ers, that we have a Super Bowl 40, what was that? Super Bowl 47 rematch in 1/3 of all Super Bowls.
In 1/3 of all Super Bowls. That was what I was going to ask.
49ers, Ravens in 1/3 of all Super Bowls. Yep.
Wow. So my 12-1 or whatever number I got that at. Oh, no, I had the Niners beating the Ravens. That's a little different. Okay. So, and that was the Super Bowl you said that you alluded to was the Super Bowl where the lights went out, if you will.
The Harbaugh Bowl.
The Harbaugh Bowl. That's right. Okay. Any other, like a unit that's historically good this year or historically bad?
The Browns defense was historically good for a while, and they kind of came back to the pack. The Jets running game is historically bad.
How bad is bad?
It's like one of the 12 worst that we've ever tracked.
Oh my God.
It's not even really Breece Hall's fault. It's like the blocking is terrible, and they always face stacked boxes, and Dalvin Cook's been bad.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't play him that way, right?
Right.
That's it. Okay. That's interesting. All that from a historical perspective. When we come back, we'll talk to Aaron, who's kind enough to join us for a couple segments. He is a esteemed voter, one of 50 for all of these NFL awards. I see his eyes going back and forth. Here we go.
Here's the Brock Purdy discussion. Here we go.
Here we go. We won't hold him to anything because obviously there's 4 more weeks of football, regular season football to be played. But we'll pick his brain as to who he might vote on in multiple awards. That's next. Back to Aaron Schatz. He, again, is the creator of the proprietary stat DVOA. He is the founder of Football Outsiders, now at FTN. Aaron, by the way, if people want to get all of FTN's stuff, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Sure. The website is ftnfantasy.com/DVOA, and you want either a Stats Plus or a Fantasy Plus subscription to be able to get all the historical numbers of DVOA and all of the splits, down in distance and by different types of receivers and where we got to throw the ball and who throws the ball best deep and who throws it best short and all that kind of stuff. And then the Fantasy Plus subscription also gets you a bunch of cool fantasy charting data that's very useful, like cornerback stats for cornerback matchups with your wide receivers, all kinds of really useful stuff.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. So you are also, and have been for I don't know as long as I've known you, but for a long time now. Yeah, only a few years now. But you are one of the 50 voters who votes on every NFL award except for Executive of the Year, which we don't bet on anyway. One of 50. Now, you don't know what the other 49 are necessarily thinking, but you are a good snapshot, I think, at least, into some of these. Let's start with MVP. If you were voting on this right now, which you aren't, I get, but if you were right now, and this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing now, it's no longer just one person and one vote, who would be your number one, sir?
It is hard to say between Prescott and Purdy. the difficult thing about Purdy, you've all read this before, right? I'm not going to tell people things they don't know. Purdy is very close to having a 50% passing DVOA as a quarterback, which has only happened 4 times in history. Marino, Brady, and Manning twice. That is astonishing.
Wow.
On the other hand, who do you think was number 1 among qualifying quarterbacks in passing DVOA last year?
Dak Prescott?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Okay. I thought you were leading me in.
So you look at Purdy and you're like, is Purdy better than Garoppolo? Yes. How much better, right? Compared to what Prescott would be to a backup quarterback.
I see. You're making the San Francisco comp. I see what you're saying. Okay.
I compared it earlier this week to the Vikings of the late 90s. The Vikings of the late 90s had 4 straight years where they had basically the same offensive personnel except Randy Moss showed up in year 2. And they had top 5 quarterbacks in DVOA for 4 straight years, and it was 4 different guys because the rest of that offense was so good that they could plug anyone in. But Randall Cunningham was better than the other 3. So you're like, how good is Randall Cunningham? Is he the MVP of 1998? Like, it's a really hard decision.
What I am hearing, though, is because the last time you were here, when you were here at the halfway mark of the season, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had Josh Allen as your MVP. That is no longer the case.
I think Josh Allen is still a really interesting long shot bet because if Buffalo goes 4-0 over the last 4 games, he'll win it.
The other elephant in the room is that you have come on here many times before and you've made the case as to why you would not ever, I don't want to say ever, but with rare exception, vote for anyone who is not a quarterback as MVP. So does this?
I am considering Tyreek Hill. Not for the number 1 spot, but to put him on my ballot.
How high on the ballot might he be on yours?
I'm not really sure.
Okay, because one of the things I've said about, I have a bet on Purdy and I have a bet on Tyreek from earlier in the year. My thinking on the Purdy thing is, I think he'll get a lot of number 2s, and with it being so splintered, maybe that will be what rules the roost on this.
You may not be. You may not be off. You may not be off. He may be everybody's number 2. You're right.
Right, and so if that's the case, could I also make the case that could be similar to Tyreek, that some people might have him high enough in their ballot to maybe flirt with this?
Maybe, but I'm guessing Tyreek is more like everyone's number 4.
Okay. Is your sense, I know you don't know what the other 49 people are thinking, but is your sense that a growing number of those 49 other voters are drifting towards the Aaron Schatz analytics state of mind?
There are more analytical voters on the panel now than there used to be. Sure, there's Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus, and there's Mina Kimes, and there's Doug Farrar, yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Coach of the Year. Talk about one that is impossible almost at this point to choose one.
This one is really hard, and a lot is going to depend on the last 4 games and who has the best record. Yes.
Yeah, boy, if you can, because I understand that no one listening here is going to hold you to this in terms of even like how you would rate these, because it's all so close. But right now, if you're like, Aaron, I need your ballot right at this moment. Who's 1, 2, 3?
Campbell is 1.
Oh, really?
Ryans and Shanahan. There's a good argument to be made that if you are not going to put Purdy number 1 on your MVP ballot, then Kyle Shanahan has to be Coach of the Year.
Yeah, that's interesting because that comes. CJ,
and it's one or the other. It's one or the other.
It's one or the other, but not both.
I don't think anybody would do both.
But that doesn't apply to D'Amico Ryans when it comes to C.J. Stroud Rookie of the Year. That's a different thing.
Well, their defense has also really improved.
Yeah. Why?
Where Shanahan runs the San Francisco offense. That's his offense. See, that's what's tough about comparing Shanahan to these other guys, though. Shanahan and Mike McDaniel, you're talking about the quality of the offenses that they run. With D'Amico Ryans and Dan Campbell and Sean Payton, you're talking about overall team management. You're really judging something completely different for those coaches compared to McDaniel and Shanahan.
Sean Payton's not going to be in your top 5, is he?
You've only voted for 3 for Coach of the Year.
Okay, there you go.
Let's see what happens in the last. Let's see what happens in the last 4 games. But I will say this: is I don't give him extra credit for coming back from the whatever 1-5 start because he also deserves. He's part of the 1-5 start.
Yeah. Also, they're plus 12 in turnovers and that, and I don't know how much of that is stellar coaching, right? Why Dan Campbell number one? Explain that to us.
Because he combines analytical savvy with locker room management and player motivation.
Now that sounds great. How many other voters do you think will have that criteria?
A couple, but not most of them.
Yeah. No love for Mike McDaniel. I guess after the other night, Mike McDaniel's got to, demerit. But
if I'm voting for someone for the reasons that I would vote for Mike McDaniel, then I'm voting for Kyle Shanahan.
Interesting. Okay. Is there any other award that you might have what you would consider to be, just anecdotally, an outlier type of opinion?
I don't know how you can vote for Damar Hamlin for Comeback Player of the Year when he never came back.
Oh, here we go. Kelly and I are laughing. Okay, so this is the one. Aaron, we didn't even talk about this.
I mean no disrespect to the man,
yeah.
And I mean no disrespect to his journey, which has been difficult. But he didn't play this year.
He had one tackle. Almost perished on the field, of course. Who would be your Comeback Player of the Year?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Sort of like, how bad is Tua's concussions versus Lamar Jackson's whatever injury he had, and I don't know. Okay. Tua maybe. I don't know.
That's interesting, though, that because the conventional wisdom, by the way, Damar Hamlin last we looked was like...
The conventional wisdom was that Hamlin would run away with the thing, but the conventional wisdom was that Hamlin would play.
Well, he's, first of all, in the betting market, you should know, he's minus 500. So, right, he's still a prohibitive favorite as far as bettors are concerned, but bettors know this is just about people voting, and so it could be anything, really, in the end. What we said, what Kelly and I just being silly on air, not even silly, but we just came to this where I was like, all right, he's got to play. If he steps on a field, he's the Comeback Player of the Year. And then Kelly, because he's smarter than I am, said, no, he's got to make one play. And he did make one play exactly. So I just wonder how many people are like that. By the way, John Mechie, right? Coming back from leukemia, not a stellar season on the field, but yet a great story, right?
It's hard. Comeback Player of the Year. You have to balance those two things. It's difficult. We all voted for Alex Smith a couple of years ago, and Alex Smith was terrible, and we voted for him anyway.
Well, he did have that 1 week where he led the NFL.
But at least he played all year.
And he had 1 week where he led the NFL in passing yards. I mean, he did actually have a game or two. So then, if it's only a football thing on the football field merited, can I hold you to one right now? No, he can't even come up with one. Okay, because it's just too murky.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.